Hello and welcome to the Warrior Arts Renaissance Show, where you give us the hard questions and we give you solid answers. I'm your host, Dr. Philip Payne. Today's topic is training with a firearm. Does it qualify as a martial arts training? Now, on the surface, you would think that this would be or at least I would think that this would be a very easy question to answer, because if I look at it, I learned shooting, I learned gun safety, I learned everything to do about firearms pretty much from my grandfather. He was an old Navy guy from World War II. Um, Taught me a lot of other things that tied into the martial arts and the combative sciences, but he taught me how to shoot, and he required me to qualify in his opinion. Of course, obviously, it wasn't an official qualification, but he required me to learn to shoot at a rate of one shot, one kill. And I was, I don't know, probably 9 or 10 at that time. And my other grandfather gave me my first two actual firearms that weren't like air rifles. My first rifle, my first shotgun. And he also taught me a lot about hunting, about stealth, moving in the woods, that sort of thing. Um, I look at it, and maybe it's because the first grandfather that taught me how to shoot and how to maintain a firearm also taught me a lot of things about how to survive a fist fight. How to survive against bad odds. So maybe that's why I look at it as a natural tie-in, as a natural part of the martial arts. But I find out, and what got me thinking about this is I didn't get this question sent in to me. I actually saw it on a martial arts forum on Facebook, of all places, and somebody asking the question, and I was shocked at the debate and the amount of debate, because to me the answer was just yes, and I found it interesting that so many people said no. But then I was reading their reasoning for why the different ones said no, and there were things like it's not traditional. I train in a system that does daggers or machete or sword, but we don't do firearms. It's not part of it. And I get that. If you're preserving a system, you preserve the system the way the founder handed it down. Okay, so like in the Borja family Kali, I I am preserving that system the way Sergeant Major Borja gave it to me, and I won't change it. I've had people say, "Well, wouldn't this work better?" And I say, "Well, maybe, but that's not how it's taught in this system. I will teach it that separately and say this is a good thing that I found from another style, maybe from Bato Jutsu or something like that." When I do Bato Jutsu drills, I was never charged with preserving our Bato Jutsu system. I just trained with a gentleman and then got his permission to teach the principles and the concepts that he had taught me as part of my own program. And so I've developed Bato Jutsu drills that I let people adapt. Okay. My son came to me one time. One of my proudest moments in life is he came to me and said, "Dad, I think I can make this drill better." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And I looked at what he was doing. I was like, "Hey, he actually made that better." Um, and so I understand there are sometimes you don't want to change things, and there are sometimes when you can be open to changing things. But I also believe that as an individual, whether it's part of a system that you train in or not, as an individual, you can learn firearms and their tactics and use that as part of your own martial arts repertoire. Now, in my school, if you get to a certain point, you're going to run into firearms. Okay. I was just went out to the range yesterday with my daughter, who is training with me. And we left without firing a shot. I'll tell you why here in a minute. But that's part of her martial arts training. Okay. And anybody who trains with me for a lengthy period of time, anybody who trains with me to the point By getting up to black belt or second degree black belt, they better believe they're going to learn firearms self-defense, firearms maintenance, firearms safety, because it's a real part of our world. It absolutely is. And whether you want to conceal carry or whether you just want to know how to handle a firearm in case you come across one, I mean, that's happened. I had a young man who lived in my hometown when I was younger, was just out walking a fence line one day for his uncle or grandpa or somebody, and stumbled upon a firearm. And thankfully, it didn't go off. He did not know exactly how to handle it. Um, so he, as I guess as carefully as he could, picked it up and carried it back to the house to give to somebody. But he didn't know what he was doing, and he could have shot himself accidentally. He could have shot somebody else accidentally, which kind of leads into my next point that I'm going to, which is the importance of firearm safety. But before I leave this section, I want to just emphasize you may not want to know firearms for your own purposes. That's fine. That's your decision as a practitioner. But understand that there are other people out there who do train them as part of their self defense program. And understand that there are situations in this life where you may come upon a weapon and need to know how to unload and unchamber that weapon if it is chambered or if it is loaded. You need to know how to find out if it's loaded, okay, for your safety and for other people's safety. But if you're on the fence about whether or not to do self defense training with firearms, I strongly encourage you to do it. Okay, um, in my school we teach empty hand, we teach palm weapons such as a knife, punya. We go to mid range weapons, machete, kali stick. Um, then we go to long range weapons, which is a sword, a spear, um, staff, and we do meteor weapons like nunchoku, and we do and monkey fist. Um, and then from there, we do projectile weapons, such as bow and arrow for archery, and then firearms. Um, and then we do improvised weapons, which is a whole other level of training. I strongly encourage you to add, if you're not doing all of those things, add them to your training. It will make you many times better at self defense. Um, Now, the story about my taking my daughter out to the firing range or to the gun range, the rifle range, and never firing a shot happens like this. So I take my daughter out there, and every lane at my favorite rifle range is full except for one. Well, actually, it had somebody there. All the others had a line of at least two or three people waiting to get in. And I used to go and shoot for 2 or 3 hours and never see another soul out there. I used to do that quite a bit, and I guess this is just a sign of the times. Everybody's worried about safety, and so everybody's wanting to get some practice in, and that's great. Okay, I encourage that. I would much rather have you well practiced and accurate than not if you're carrying a weapon. But I walked over first to the range that wasn't even I'm sorry, the lane of the range. It wasn't even where I wanted to shoot with her because she's a beginning shooter. She's only 12, and so I walk over there with her, and there's a guy and a woman, a man and a woman. They look like they're probably a married couple, and they're having a little bit of an argument, a little bit of a debate. I can tell they're both getting frustrated. And then he takes a firearm, a pistol. He's on a 200-yard rifle range. And he takes a pistol out of the box. And I have no doubt this was a brand new pistol. because I watched him cut the packing tape off of the box. Then I watched him try to figure out how to load it. This man is sharing a range with other people. He is sharing the lane booth with and in the bench with his apparently wife. He's trying to load a brand new firearm he has obviously never handled before. I'm not sure he had ever handled a pistol before from the way he was acting. So I took my daughter and we moved down a little ways, give the arguing couple their space. And the next thing I saw was this: two men. They were at separate benches in the same lane. I watched them each load their guns. Okay, they each had a rifle. And I watched the guy on the right sit down, aim, fire. Then he lays his rifle, still loaded. He still had more rounds in the gun. I watched him put several rounds in. He lays the loaded rifle down, pointing toward the target, did not put the safety on, walked about halfway down the lane to, I guess, was checking his accuracy, turns around and yells to his buddy, "Hey, I got close." Seriously, this guy was literally celebrating the fact that he got close. Okay? This was a 25-yard shot. And at 25 yards, that's a pistol range shot, folks, if you don't know. That is so short. I other than training somebody who's never shot a rifle, I would not spend time on a 25-yard range with a rifle. It just, it's not what they're made for. And he's celebrating that he got close to the target. He walks back up to, that's not even the worst part. He walks back up toward the shelter booth there where the two benches are. And his buddy, who has since, after he walked down, his buddy sat down, had his gun aimed downrange where the guy had walked to. And as the guys are getting about, I'd say about 10 feet from the bench booth, the other guy fires his gun. Well, the other guy had some binoculars, and he picks them up, and he looks, and he yells, "Hey, me too." So they each got close to hitting their target. People, I have no problem with people who are first learning to shoot, okay? And I have no problem with people who aren't as accurate as they want to be and go out and practice, okay? That's what we should all do. But for crying out loud, take a firearms safety and maintenance course, okay, before you try to load and fire a weapon you've obviously never held before. And think about your safety walking. I mean, when you're checking your accuracy, don't walk in front of loaded guns laying prone or in your buddy's hand. And when your buddy's in the lane, don't freaking shoot your gun. Okay, now maybe I'm a little wound up about this, but this is where I turned to my daughter. I said, "We're leaving." And we went back to camp. We've been, it's actually why I'm running a day behind on recording this, is because we were on camping, fishing, and doing outdoorsy survival stuff, and we just didn't get back in time for me to publish on Wednesday. But folks, I'm sorry, and maybe I put this on Facebook, and people, there was a guy who was on there saying, oh, you think you're such a tough guy because you know how to shoot guns now, and I'm like, you know what, I've known how to shoot guns for a lot of years, buddy, and he's like, yeah, you just think you're a tough guy. No, no, I don't. Okay. That never entered my mind when I was posting that. It's not what I'm not trying to prove that I'm like got superior knowledge on firearms because they are not my specialty. But if you're going to do firearms for self defense, for hunting, for recreation, shooting clay pigeons, I don't care what it is. Learn safety, learn maintenance, and apply them. Think about the other guy. Think about the fact you want to go home alive and you want him to go home alive. Okay? If you ever pull a trigger and kill somebody, let it be the guy who's trying to rape your wife or you if you're or whatever, and depending upon your situation, or trying to rob your house or hurt your kids or something. Okay, kidnap your kids. Shoot that guy. Don't shoot the guy who has the misfortune of being at the next bench to you at the range. That's not good training, whether you consider firearms a part of the martial arts or not. That's all the time I have for this week. I will talk at you next week.